himself in his own eyes. That's my flesh. Guys, you ever made a muscle in the mirror? Don't lie. Here I come to save the day. See, you're flattering yourself. Sitting there sucking in your gut. Okay? Ladies, we won't even go there. Flattereth himself in his own eyes until his iniquity be found to be hateful. The words, and yeah, we are hateful. The words of his mouth are iniquity and deceit. He hath left off to be wise and to do good. He deviseth mischief upon his bed. He setteth himself in a way that is not good. He abhorreth not evil. That's my flesh. It's like my flesh told God, hey, God, this is how I am. God said, I knew that. And God wrote it in a book. But this is what really got me. The transgression of the wicked saith within my heart. And I'm telling you, any true born-again Christian, the first thing that they start doing is being honest with themselves. And I tell you what, God brought me to a place one time in my life where I had to look myself in the eye and deal with who I really was. And I did not like what I saw. Didn't like it. Still don't. I want out is what I want. But see, that's your flesh. Now let's go to Romans 7. And I know exactly. Gentleman that wrote this, let's see, John, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have dealt with people who have had this idea, and some still do. I've broken fellowship with people over this because they keep insisting that at some point they're going to make it. They're going to be sinless. They're not going to do anything wrong ever again. Let me tell you what that does. Let me tell you what that breeds, let's say, in a person's life, or in a church or a ministry or some kind of religious movement, Christian movement. Let me tell you what that breeds. Number one, it breeds judgment and contempt for anybody, number one, who doesn't agree with the doctrine. It breeds judgment and contempt to anybody that fails. And there's some sin there, because the sinless perfection crowd then says, you are not saved. You're not a Christian because you did this. Very judgmental, setting themselves on a plateau above everybody else, telling people that, and I'm looking at my screen and I'm getting hate mail already. I saw the little glimpse of it, and I'm getting hate mail already. They set themselves up on a high pedestal above everybody else. And I want to tell you something. I've hung around some of you fundamentalists out there that think that you are 3 steps above Mike Hoggard. And I'm telling you, according to the scriptures, I know your dirty little secrets. You're just as rotten and filthy and low down and no good as I am. I wouldn't say you're worse, because I know me, and I don't know you. But I know what my Bible says about you. And you're not Mr. Goody Two-Shoes like you say you are. I don't even know if whoever I'm talking to is listening. I'm just saying, I've been around. I know how it works. I know, I had these preachers that I grew up under, up on Mount Everest. And now that I've been one, and I know what these guys go through, and I know what they have to deal with, for any pastor or any preacher to display a character to their people or anybody else of superiority, I'm going to tell everybody that that's bogus. It's not real. And you're lying through your teeth about who you really are. That's what you're doing. I must have woke up mean today. Whew. But anyway, and so that's what that breeds. Number one, superiority. And then it breeds this idea. See, with this superiority, it breeds this idea amongst the superiors that they are going to get more stuff in heaven than all the lower people down here. Their mansion's going to be bigger. Their streets of gold are going to be larger. They're going to have crowns hanging all over the walls, trophies, awards, acreage. They're going to have way more stuff than everybody else does in heaven. That's a lie. Not true. Not true. I've covered this already from the scriptures. Then let me tell you what else it breeds. It breeds a corrupt dishonesty that most lost people never attain to. Jerry Lee Lewis made the statement one time concerning this when this rock music and contemporary Christians started flowing into the churches. Jerry Lee Lewis got it. I mean, he got it. And in case you don't know, Jerry Lee Lewis is first cousin to the Reverend Jimmy Swaggart and Mickey Gilley. They are all three first cousins to one another. Some of the most amazing, I'm a piano player, some of the most amazing piano players to ever show up. Mickey Gilley, Jimmy Swaggart, and Jerry Lee. Jerry Lee Lewis being interviewed and being asked about all this music going into the church. He said, well, I'll tell you what, it's the devil's music. And the difference between me and them, he said, I know I'm playing the devil's music. He knew it. I mean, maybe his conscience seared with a hot iron, but at least he knew who he was serving and was honest about it. And the sinless perfection crowd, let me tell you what they do. If you think for a second that they are actually both sinless and perfect in their flesh, you've been deceived. They pulled the wool over your eyes pretty well, because they're not. And what it does is that it leads to a very corrupt and hypocritical dishonesty about their own deeds, because they do them. They just can't let anybody find out that they do it, because they have to lie in order to maintain the doctrine. And this is just a good rule to follow. If at any point and in any way your doctrinal belief on anything, I don't care if it's the blood, I don't care if it's salvation, I don't care if it's prophecy, eschatology, the rapture, the second coming, the millennium, I don't care if it's baptism, if in any way your doctrine has as one of its legs that it's leaning on something that's a lie and not true, you don't believe the right doctrine. You don't. That's why, I got blasted by the pro-Clarence Larkin crowd because I opened up Clarence Larkin's book, Dispensational Truth, and I read numerous times where when the King James didn't say what he wanted it to say, he went to the Revised Version because it said it the way he thought it should say it. And then over and over and over and over again, Gary right now is going through this book again. He keeps running up here going, look what I found in this book. You got to see this. I'd take a picture of it. And I sit him down and fan him, cool him off a little bit. But constantly in Dispensational Truth, Clarence Larkin says these because he believes that there was an earth before the earth. And Larkin constantly is proving it by saying, and the earth became without form and void. And the earth became without form and void. That was when the earth became without form and void. He says that over and over and over in this book. Here's the problem. The King James does not say the earth became without form and void. It says it was without form and void. So that's made up. And if you have a doctrine and one of its legs that holds it up is a lie, you don't have the truth. Period. Either the unaltered, unedited, incorruptible scriptures support your doctrine totally, or you don't believe the truth. And so the idea of sinless perfection, here's what you have in order to really believe this doctrine, here's what you have to do. Number one, you have to lie to everybody and telling them you no longer sin. And then you have to maintain that lie by constantly hiding your sin. Then at some point, in order to maintain the lie, and you figured, at some point, I might get caught. What you have to do then is just simply say, well, that's not a sin. What I did was not a sin. I had a guy in my office a few years ago. Came up from Texas. Sat in my office. He came to just a couple of services. He was moving on. He was staying in this area for a while. And he'd heard me, I guess, Prophecy Club or Southwest Radio, something like that, and he stopped by here. And he told me a story. He was at a church, and they taught sinless perfection. And the pastor was an older man, and he was eventually turning the church over to his son, kind of like John and Joel Osteen, but it wasn't them. But anyway, and he was turning this church over to his son. Well, his son, a grown man, was